have AI business leaders and practitioners in this panel today with us. Firstly, thank you so much for taking the time out on a weekday out of your incredibly busy schedules, and really appreciate you for being here with us. Before we get started, would you each like to briefly introduce yourselves, your name, what do you do in AI space, and a brief introduction to your background. Dr. Rohit?
Yeah, I can start. Hi, good evening, everyone. Excited to be here. My name is Rohit Bunus. I'm Senior Director at Target in India. I lead the merchandising data science functions, and I've been at Target 16 years now. My total industry experience is more than 20 years, most of which has been in the data world. It was not called AI or data science back then, but how it's called today. Excited to be here. I've done my master's in IT, and I have a PhD in graph theory.
Thank you, Rohit. Dr. Sunil?
So, good evening, everyone. So, this is Dr. Sunil Kumar Uppala here. I'm working as the Director of Data Science in Ericsson. I'm working there from past 4 years. So, we have a horizontal called Global AI Accelerator. So, we do have data scientists and engineers along with the Ericsson research separately. So, how do you really just like you are talking about accelerator here. So in Ericsson, how do you accelerate the penetration of AI both in production and solutions? So we'll talk more some of the opportunities down the line.
What I do with Shell is I'm at the business IT interface of emerging tech. So right from AI, NLP, blockchain, machine vision, we are trying to build solutions for the rest of Shell. And Shell R&D spends 1 billion on R&D. So that's a significant spend, and that's what I do. Great to be here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anirban from Akamai. I'm a director of engineering in the IT organization there. So Akamai is into security and content delivery and cloud computing, but my own area is focused on more of IT systems within the system, within the company, ordering systems, recommendation. And I've been doing a LLM project for the India management team in looking for operational efficiencies. I've been there for 16 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so we have a gamut of experience here and people across various functions. So the first question I kind of begin with this, given that we have various functions here, what are some of the biggest opportunities that you kind of see at your organizations and in your industries in general? What type of use cases have you seen generating the most value where AI, ML, data science is kind of used? You want to take that?
Yeah, I can start with retail. So Target, for hopefully all of you know or have been to the US, hopefully shopped at a Target. The National Retail Federation, in their latest report, talked about that retail, which was about $5 trillion, just as we got into COVID, is going to grow to about 8 billion by 2026, just 3 years from now. So that's like a 60% growth. And obviously, that means that growth cannot happen without using the vast amounts of data and automating a lot of decisions within retail. Right? I would just acknowledge Dr. Shailesh for talking about on one of the slides about retail and how complex the ecosystem is. And in the retail world, we talk about retail in 4 broad buckets. So when we think about, we start with planning. Now you are forecasting what locations you want to have stores at. You're doing financial forecasting, and then there's workforce forecasting, getting into optimization. The next stage starts getting into more of whether you, as a retailer, we want to buy or make the awesome assortment that you would see in our Target stores. Now again, here there's a lot of decisions about which vendor to go after, what locations do we want to source these items from, and so on. I'm not going to get into a lot of details here. The next one is to eventually move all these items to our store locations in the US. So again, freight optimization, truckload optimization, eventually making sure that the right products are in reaching the right stores at the right time. And ending with the sell feature or function, where you want to make sure that in the stores we have the right layout happening. It's a great experience for our guests as they walk in. So each of these, if you think about retail now as like a flow across all of these functions, is billions and billions of decisions, like I said, with all of these use cases. And therefore, I would just say that AI is now at the heart of every single one of these. At Target, we play in a majority of these. We are nascent in some, but we are fairly mature in a lot. And hopefully, during this conversation, I will try to bring that up.
So, Sunil.
Uh, So when you are asking for the opportunities from a telecom perspective, when we are looking, so we are solving interesting problems which are traditional ones, be it anomaly detection or be it traffic balancing, which are already part of it. Maybe with the new technologies. But interestingly, with the development of other technologies, I can give one example on the visual intelligence. So whatever you see the towers, 4G towers or 5G towers which are upcoming, so there are lakhs of towers in a particular city like Bangalore. If you are talking about how do you really maintain it, can we use the drone technology to take the videos and use the computer vision instead of the people climbing it for the simple applications, be it too much of cable bending or maybe too much of exposure of the these cables, right, or the equipment point of it. How do you really automate that thing so that effectively the same example Dr. Sailesh also mentioned, the churn prediction or maybe the customer satisfaction at the end. So we are talking about huge scale kind of applications of the data available for us, not just only the KPIs which we are getting TBs of data every day, plus the generative AI definitely having some of the applications and even the computer vision aspects. So we have opportunities in the entire gamut of these things in telecom as well.
Karthik?
Thanks, Mani. So energy systems, as you know, are pretty complex. So while I think most of the people think that Shell operates only petrol pump companies, so that's the common misconception. We are in the end-to-end value chain for energy. So if you just look at B2C, the customer loyalty algorithms that we run for the customers who come to our forecourts is based on AI. And then when you look at electric chargers, we are implementing some of the largest number of electric chargers. Again, how the electric chargers get their energy from is a complex ecosystem, right? So it is based on a mix of traditional wind, solar, battery tech, and that's what the EV chargers actually get. So we are using AI even for that and to even place where the next EV charger is going to be. So in fact, we are placing an EV charger every 15 minutes in Europe, but we need to have the help of AI to decide where to put them, right? So that's in the B2C. In B2B, which is our biggest sector, we sell lubricants to some of the world's biggest companies. The idle time for some of these big machines is significantly contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. So we're using AI in reducing the idle time so that the GHG emissions are coming down. Then we go down to what Dr. Sailesh was saying in manufacturing refining. There is significant potential for AI in predictive maintenance. We're reducing the amount of downtime of our equipment. We have 17,000 equipments, 3 million sensors, the full IoT stack. All of that data is coming to us real time, and we are applying predictive maintenance to reduce our downtime so that the deferment in the refineries is down. And lastly, I think even in subsurface and exploration, because oil and gas has to be removed from the wells, we get CT scans similar to our MRI and CT scans that we get from hospitals, right? So these scans and X-rays have to be analyzed, and it takes humongous amount of effort for human beings to do that. We are applying high-performance compute and AI algorithms even in that to really understand where we should go and extract the next well, where there is maximum potential, right? So the whole end-to-end value chain, we have more than hundreds of applications using AI. So that is just a sample I thought I'll share.
Okay, so as a security company, obviously think of modeling the traffic and looking for patterns in traffic, real-time clustering, and seeing is this a threat or is this not a threat. Suppose somebody is attempting script injection, so could I quickly learn an embedding and attempt to detect that this is indeed somebody's faking an SQL here. So that's a security side, obviously. Then there is professional services. We want to answer responses. Can you enable the reps who are answering so that they don't take too much time to respond to customers who are trying to configure their websites? On my own personal side, the CIO side, the sales team tells me that their pipelines, they cannot predict very well, like how much do they have to build up because some customers drop. So that can we do something there? Then search, I mean, what I worked on, like how can we enable other employees for search? And that's where LLMs comes in.
Awesome. Now that we've seen the opportunities in this space, just going beyond the hype, like what are some of the challenges that you also face in the process, and how have you worked to mitigate some of these challenges? Sunil, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can start with that. So some of the challenges what we see is definitely return on investment. So now we see AI is not just only machine learning and deep learning. So and one is taking to the scale and then showing the business value at the end dollar matters, right? So that is one. And second aspect is the trustworthy aspects, what Dr. Sailesh also touched upon. To re-emphasize the trustworthy AI aspects, it's not just only the robustness of the technical aspects. We are talking about ethical, socio-technical aspects, and even the legal aspects. We are talking about data protection bill in India, and even EU Act is talking about it, and even White House coming up with its own rules and regulations. So there are all these put together, legal, ethical, and robustness. When we are working in tandem, then only we can see the real success of implementations, not just only the POC sitting in the research labs, right? So those are the challenges which we see that, why I'm saying that as a challenge is, and because we are talking to a lot of startups, the thinking process should come from the beginning. It's not like a security which we'll add at the end of this product, right? So right from the beginning, we can see whatever the domain you are working on, if you're following wherever the target customers are. If you're following the customers at Europe, you maybe need to stick to that European Union guidelines. So land of rule also applies. So we need to consider all these three angles to make the product successful. And this is definitely a challenge, and I will see that as an opportunity as well.
Given that we have many startup founders here as well, right? They'll be looking for these white spaces that Naveen called out at the beginning. So, given that we're data scientists building models, we're also very conscious on what kind of models can we use, what kind of use cases can we really focus on. So, what kind of ethical considerations do you have when you kind of invest in certain initiatives related to data sciences?
That also depends on the domain. If I take example of bias, we talk about bias means what comes to our mind is gender bias. That is just one of the bias out of 179 cognitive biases people call about, right? But that is maybe more evident in some of the B2C kind of a scenarios. Whereas when it comes to the telecom, that may not be the top priority of the bias, right? Because we are talking about different biases. So we need to see from the domain perspective what does that bias mean for us when it comes the recommendation part of it or the prediction part of it. That is just one part of it. Second thing is on the just extending the thought process on ML ops aspects, right? So now you talk about some of the data, whether it is maybe a good representation of the entire sample or not, right? If you build the system thinking that this whatever the data available for us, which is relevant data for us, and that is going to solve all the problems, that may not be the real scenario. So the data distribution might change. So maybe intentional or not intentional, when we're building the system, we are responsible at the end, right? Being the developers. So taking care of those aspects also will come into this picture. And based on the domain, we need to see how do you prioritize. That's what my take.
Thank you, Sunil.
Yeah, I may just add, I think Dr. Sunil covered it really well. At Target, we look at 7 aspects of responsible AI. I'll not cover all of them, but we want to make sure that we call our customers as guests. Guest privacy is at the heart of any AI or model build that we have, making sure that we are protecting our guests and anything around that. The other piece that we are also very, again, Dr. Sunil talked about it, is the equity bit of responsible AI, which means that diversity, equity, and inclusion is at the heart of how we build our AI algorithms. So a lot of stress on bias testing, if you may, to ensure that our AI algorithms are, for example, not always predicting something for a certain set of guests versus not for the others, and so on. So, yeah, but I'll let the other panelists talk.
We can go to the next one, no worries. I think from November 2022 onwards, like from the ChatGPT moment kind of dropped, everybody's kind of, that rage has been going on, right? So with generative AI being a big theme since this year onwards, what are the kind of opportunities or concerns, and how has it essentially been revolutionizing your organizations? Anirban, you wanna-
I can take that. So Yeah, so one obvious thing you can do with ChatGPT-like models is they answer questions. So could you use it to answer questions for your professional services teams? That's the most retrieval augmentation, augmented generation. Everybody probably has heard of this in this audience. The next thing is developer productivity. Suppose there is a very complex report of, customer is using our site. There's a lot of data around it. You have to generate a complex report. Today, a data scientist works with the customer to kind of retrieve that and create that dashboard. There's a lot of time. So can I generate the code, at least a starter code, and can they kind of save their time and work from there? So developer productivity. The third thing is obviously there is a lot of marketing content that is going out, recommendation, promotional mails. So can we, save time on the promotional mails? And one thing that's interesting to me, because I don't like this word generative because it's kind of hiding that thing. It can process text, it can extract fields, and it can actually take action. So today, if a human in the loop is reading a ticket, doing something, and enabling some other account for somebody or setting something up, you can actually increase the cycle time a lot. Just it's all self-service driven, so it's all automated. So these four are the areas. The threats are obviously challenges. Obviously, cost is one because these are billion parameter models and not easy to uh, prove ROI for. And to prove ROI first, like it's a chicken and egg, you would have to show it, and then security comes in. You can't test it on the cloud. So security is another thing. Legal is the third thing because I think there are certain EU regulations now that these models that we see today, some of them might be invalid in a year's time because you have to give attribution. So there's that thing I'm trying to ask legal, like what's the update there? Like what do I do? Still waiting on it. So legal is one, and as a security company, obviously we are always you can't train with customer data, so a lot of things to watch out for. Uh, I guess and hallucinations, obviously, that those things are there, and stale data. So working around RAG kind of addresses that. So some of the things.
Yeah, you mentioned a good point about the catch-22 situation. Like, you want businesses to invest in this space, but they want you to essentially show value, but you're unable to show value without they investing in this particular process. But as a practitioner, how do you approach a particular problem? Like, where do you start? How do you get? What would be your first few steps to show value?
So I think this problem is only for large companies who have a lot to lose if something goes out of breaks publicly. But small startups, not a problem. They can go to the cloud easily. But we try to do small POCs with public data. So essentially, I can't take private data out. I've been told not to do that. So some sites, we have documentation available. So I can use that on Google Colab or Paperspace and try to show that it's working, do some fine tuning, show it's working, and like extreme things like trying to use like 4-bit models, like or like stretching the system to the extreme to drive the max out of the GPU you have. And once it's there, like take it back to the business and try to get investment.
Yeah. Just to add one point on that, right? So most of you might be following, but just to reiterate from a practice perspective, always what we have seen, especially from a data science lifecycle point of view, is iteration kind of a thing. It's not like a well-defined problem like a software life cycle. So, and we can't ask whether it's startup companies or accelerator programs like this within the big organization. I can't wait for end of the year or maybe 1 year to show the value. So within a quarter or maybe within few agile cycles, we should show the value. So the best way to work is going in the iteration. So we should not over promise to our management that okay, it can change the entire game. But we need to be realistic and show the value, and then we can build on top of it. That's what we have seen from practice, which is really working. Fail fast as well, right? Just like AI first point of it, whether it is that particular model is really suitable for us or not. From a generative AI perspective, just to add, I have seen an article, most of you might have seen as well, that OpenAI may bankrupt if the same situation continues, if they don't get the revenue from the business side of it. Right now, it's a killer application, definitely it reaches to the masses, right? But is it going to be the same application which can give the value for the enterprises who can really adopt it and solve their problems, right? So we need to wait and see on that.
You want to add something?
Yeah. So I'll just add on to what the other speakers have already spoken about. So what are the things that as a large retailer, it's expensive to do big tests, right? We're talking about as Target, we have 2,000 stores in the US. Now, if I take the example of, let's say, we want to understand if we give additional facings to a particular brand of milk on our shelf, how do we test that? Right? Now that's expensive because you are trying to influence certain processes which are fairly old that you want to move, but you want to move fast, you want to learn fast. So I'll kind of also go back to what Dr. Shailesh was saying. So we built a lot of simulations across our various domains. So whether it's network simulation, whether it is simulations across our merchandising, assortments, etc. So that gives a really good sense that we can share back with our end users of how things would play out. But nothing obviously beats an actual A/B test. Um, a second point I may add is we've invested a lot in proving the worth of our AI products through back testing. So I don't know if you've, hopefully, you've all heard that term, but the challenge that, as a large retailer that we are up against is to, as we kind of make our products or are trying to push for adoption of our products, we are looking at users who have expertise in these processes or these decisions over many, many years, right? So how do we prove that old mainframe system that was taking those decisions for the last 20 years, this AI algorithm that you are now going to introduce is starting to get better. So that's where we, as an organization, we've invested in making sure that with every rollout, we are back testing and constantly showing that here is the incremental value that this new AI product is going to give you versus the older system. So that has helped us a lot, making sure that we get a lot of adoption for our AI products.
That's a good point about the value itself. I think you really touched on my next question about the ROI of all of these investments. We've seen so many blog posts on the internet talking about, hey, we've seen a lot of data science demos just being demos at the end of the day, but not really going to production. But I think that is the reason why I want to ask a question on how do you essentially assess ROI before even investing in a project? And Karthik, you want to address it?
Sure, happy to give my views there. I think going back to the previous topic around Gen AI, so Shell has also decided to go in significantly and invest there. That said, we have created our own instance where we want to keep our data internal. So going back to some of the points Anirban was saying, so we are doing that. We also think that there's a lot of hype in this topic, so we are going pretty slow. We want to be measured in terms of where we want to use Gen AI versus the remaining technologies out there, right? So that's been a very choiceful decision that we're going through right now. In terms of the value, finally, we measure value by different metrics. NPV is one, customer satisfaction is one. But for an engineering company like ours in the energy business, operating efficiency, reducing maintenance, reduction in deferment is a very key aspect. So depending on which sector and which area in Shell, in the whole end-to-end value chain that I explained earlier, the traditional mechanisms for measuring the business value of projects still applies even for AI and Gen AI. So I don't want to say that we do use any other methodology. We are still going by the basic principles of what is the impact it is creating. And that's the ones that get funding as well. Yeah. Thanks.
So you want to add on the...
I want to add one point. So what is the difficulty for us is, suppose we added two features. Take example of a car. Okay, next version of car added two new features from AI perspective, but there is an increase in sales. But how much I can attribute to these features, right? So this is not very straightforward. Maybe some of the aspects which we have seen is maybe taking the feedback after some surveys, feedbacks. It is all indirect mechanism point of it. The same way the feature, the mobiles, we keep maybe iPhone 15 is coming now. They might have corrected some of the features which they have got the feedback last time from 13 and 14 point of it. But how much of the individual feature attributing to the entire sales is not a straightforward thing. But when it comes to the ROI, what we have seen is some of the points what our other speaker mentioned. On top of it, we see both from a measurable ROI point of it and strategic ROI. So what does that mean is, if you are not doing that, maybe our competitor is taking away, right? So some of those aspects which are not straightforward in terms of measurement, we may need to consider those to get the value maybe within, let's say, 18 months or 2 years kind of a thing.
This is a good point, primarily because when I kind of reflect on my data science experience in the last 10 years, as I grew from a junior to a senior, I think the first big change in my mindset was stop looking at model metrics, start looking at business metrics. This goes back to what Dr. Sherishma was talking about. How do we essentially have these control these levers to essentially move the needle in the right direction? Not just the technical metrics, but really the business metrics, right? And a warm round of applause to all of our panelists for taking time out on a weekday and being here. Really appreciate all of you. Thank you. Thank you for being a great audience. Thank you. Have a good day.